Hey everybody, it's your friendly neighborhood Jerry Rasco here with you again in time for another amazing Spider-Man art retrospective video. Very cool issue that we're going to be looking at today. We will be focusing on the Amazing Spider-Man number 42. This one has a lot of interesting stuff going on here, some very critical moments in the Spider-Man lore to review with y'all, and yeah, like I said, some very interesting things of note in this issue, so it's going to be a good one. As always, of course, I thank everybody who supports the channel. We do put out these Amazing Spider-Man videos every Monday at 8 a.m. Central Time, so make sure, if you're just finding us out now, make sure to check the subscription or the subscribe button here on YouTube, and make sure to turn on the notifications. That way you are aware and notified every time we have a new video that comes out. Not only will I be putting out videos, like I said, about the Amazing Spider-Man issues that I review every Monday, but sometimes we've done, a couple of episodes back, we did a live stream version for issue number, I think it was issue number 40. Or was it 39? The last issue of Steve Ditko's run, I think it would be 39, on The Amazing Spider-Man. We have some more live stream episodes planned. And then there's also other videos here on my channel that talk about art, making comics, art supplies, art tools, tips and tricks that I use for making comics. So if you're interested in any of that stuff, again, please think about subscribing and make sure the notifications are marked on. So let's get into the comic here. Like I said, this is Amazing Spider-Man number 42, and it's going to be a doozy. So let's jump in. Okay, so here we have the cover to the Amazing Spider-Man number 42. I will let everybody know, if you're not already a fan of this series, this is a scanned PDF version of this comic. So back in 2004, Marvel collected what was at that time the entire run of The Amazing Spider-Man and went ahead and scanned every issue of that comic. So what we're looking at here is actually, it's not a reprint, it's not a Treasury edition or any of those kinds of reprinted material. This is a scanned version of the original comic that was sold back in the 60s, and we'll get into it and we'll see exactly when this one was made, but let's talk about the cover first. So as always, one of the great ways to sell a cover, and you have to remember, where are these comic books being sold back at this time? These are being sold in drugstores, in convenience stores, at newsstands, things like that. So they're on shelves, and when they are put on these kinds of shelves, they're sort of stacked on top of each other. So you'd have, the bottom row, and then the one above it would be slightly behind it and slightly behind it all the way up the row. And so you may not see the bottom half of the comic. So really the top half to the top third of the comic is very critical. That's why the cover is, or the title is always up here at the top, along with the box art to let you know that it's Spider-Man, especially for, younger readers. And you want that to be bold and bright and eye-catching. And then, of course, yeah, if you were covering the bottom half of this, you're still going to get that top half of Spider-Man fighting. And this is, if you haven't followed along, you missed previous episodes, this is Colonel John Jameson, the son of publisher JJJ J. Jonah Jameson, the publisher of the Daily Bugle. So this is his son, John Jameson, the astronaut. And here he is clobbering Spider-Man. So we see the title here, The Birth of a Hero, and a few things. Again, great, eye-catching. You have the action. It's perfect. It's going to make you want to pick up this comic and find out what happened. It is interesting that they mention the birth of a hero. We know Spidey is a hero. Who is this guy that he's punching out Spidey? One of the things you would note, just from psychology of storytelling, he is moving from right to left. As we've talked about many times on the channel, we in Western culture read from left to right. Left to right is more of a positive motion. It infers action and energy and positive moving forward. Having this guy strike from the other direction is a little bit of a negative. So just from a psychology standpoint, I know it's subtle, but you actually don't necessarily read him as the hero. He also has this very big scowl on his face. Now, in today's culture, we have obviously more heroes that you would call anti-heroes or things like that, you know, a Wolverine, a Punisher that we still think of as heroes would be have a look on this face maybe, but back then, definitely something to take note of. And then the last thing, we talk about this on the channel a ton as well, look at his colors. So he is dressed in secondary colors. Now there's a couple of reasons. One is just you want him to be very separate from Spider-Man. If he was also dressed in reds and blues, like say like Captain America, the two figures would clash, and the colors together would be much more difficult to separate visually who's who in the space and the three-dimensionality you're trying to create with these lines. By putting a secondary colors, and those are, so red, yellow, and blue are your primaries, green, orange, and purple are your secondary colors. And we've talked about characters like the Green Goblin, the Lizard, the Sandman, the Scorpion, Dr. Octopus, all these characters that Spidey fights over and over, the Vulture, all wear secondary colors. Greens, oranges, browns, things like that help separate them. And again, the psychology of storytelling tells you my heroes are in primary colors. Reds, yellows, blues, those are your heroes. Your other characters, when they're not, maybe they are not as heroic as you think. So that's what we've got here for an image. Great, great cover. And the last thing I'll add here is that the dark background, again, helps everything pop forward. So terrific cover there. Great idea. Now we open up into the splash page. Over here on the inside cover, we have the indicia. And this was from 1966. So there we go. Yeah, November of 1966. And I like the splash page where this is what's happening. The hero is moving. It's a big image. It's going right into the action in the story. That part is great. I think that's terrific. It's a good use of the page to bring us directly into the story with big action. So I really like it. It's a pretty good pose. It's interesting. He's swinging away, but his foot is hooked on the web. So that's kind of a different approach than I've ever seen. So I think at this point, John Romita Jr. has only got a few issues in to where he is the regular artist here on Spider-Man. And so I think he's still figuring some of that stuff out. Because let's face it, there aren't any other characters in comics that would swing through the air exactly the way that Spider-Man does. Batman might swing on a rope. Daredevil has his line that he swings on. But it's all a little different than Spider-Man's webbing. So I think he's still trying to figure that out. But it's a nice down shot. You have Spidey big, and then we're looking down on the crowd as he's swinging away with this money bag. Couple things to point out. One, John Romita is simply listed as artist, which means that he would have done both the pencils and the inks. So up till now, Mike Esposito was the inker on the book, and now we see John inking himself. And there's a couple reasons you would have done that. One is just as a penciler, you know what the image is supposed to be, and sometimes penciling your own work or inking your own pencils allows you to have it exactly the way you want. There's no mixing and matching of styles. Also, you can work faster. I don't have to pencil every single little detail because I'm going to be the one going in inks, so I can kind of do a lot more finishes in inks. That sometimes can speed up the overall process. And then there's just some artists that are just good at it. So it depends. So we're going to be looking at that and having kind of an eye on the inks of this comic, maybe more than we have in the past, to kind of see how we feel about John Romita as an inker. The last thing I'll point out here to note is this color registration issue. So you can see the red on Spider-Man goes outside of the lines over here, and then like his eye is covered with the red and the white is up above. All the colors are shifted up a little bit. You can really see it here in the copy on the top where the red is up high, and you can see the white space where it would be. So the reason for that is the way that things were printed back then is they were printed in separate passes for each color. So today, with modern printing, you can just sort of put a piece of paper through a printer and it prints all the colors for you all at once, right? And it's very exact, and you have lots of variation and tons, all the colors in the rainbow and beyond at your disposal. Back then, what they would do is they would have a different printer for different colors. So you'd have a red printer, a blue printer, a yellow printer. So actually it'd be red, magenta, blue, cyan, yellow, black. And so each pass, the paper was put through a different printer, and you would print. So if something was going to be pure red, it might be 100% red, or, it would be actually red is a combination of magenta and yellow. So it'd be, let's pretend 80% magenta and 20% yellow gives you this real sort of candy apple red. So you'd put it through and 80% magenta, and then you take it to the yellow printer and 20% yellow on top of it. And the mixture of the two is what makes this color. Well, if your paper isn't lined up perfectly, if everything isn't lined up exactly, when you put it through a second time, this is what happens. So either the most likely the color is probably pretty right, and it looks like it's only the red. I would say maybe the black lines were off, but I would say that the red registration was off, because it doesn't look like the other, I guess a little bit, the other colors are off some, but it doesn't seem too bad on the blue, around Spidey. But like I said, the whole thing was off somewhere. So just something to take into consideration when we were reading these comics back in the day. Sometimes you would get this. You'd get a copy that the registration was off and things didn't print right, and you went, and you just ran with it. Today, we would look at digital proofs where you could see it before it went on paper and go, hey, that looks like things are off. We got to fix these things. But back then, it was like, hey, we're gonna print it, and then we'll fix it on the next one. And you just sort of dealt with it, and it's what it was. So over here, Spidey is, like I said, he's swung away from a bank with a money bag. This is the guy who runs the bank, and of course Spidey's robbed him, and J. Jonah Jameson is right. This is a great image here of Spidey climbing up the support of the bridge, and the Queensboro Bridge. I think it's terrific. I love the rivets. Great angle, great pose of him using his fingertips and his toes as he's climbing up. I think that's really, really good. But then over here I go, what is the scale? So either this bridge is very, very short, or Spidey is extra big. Now, I'm not personally familiar with the Queensboro Bridge. I don't know if the sides here are only maybe 6 or 7 feet tall. I feel like it would be taller, but I don't know for sure. So could be either way. It just seems odd, but you have what appears to be a very large bridge drawn in very good perspective, and Spidey seems really, really big by comparison. So he drops the money bag in the water. So it seems like he has no interest in the money, but we don't get further explanation than that, at least for now. Now we cut back over to J. Jonah Jameson and his son. So again, previous episodes, this is one where you have to have read some issues before. In the previous episode, we had the Rhino, and the Rhino was trying to capture Jameson's son because John had been exposed to some sort of space spore on an astronaut mission, and nobody knew what it was going to do to him. And it seems like they just said foreign powers, but we're pretty sure what they mean is the Russians were trying to capture him. And now all of a sudden he starts sort of freaking out, and he becomes incredibly strong and incredibly big to the point where he can't control himself. Again, we talk about space spores. This takes me back to the episode with the looter, the guy who finds the meteor, cracks it open. There's some sort of gas or something inside that gives him super strength. So again, we're seeing this sort of rehash of an idea. Maybe, whether it was Stan felt like we hadn't really delved into the idea of the looter deep enough, or maybe he just felt like it was just a better idea to be used for Jameson's son. Who knows? But it feels like we're kind of revisiting. I do want to say this. I like this a lot. So as his strength increases, he physically grows. He gets physically larger, and he tears his clothes. And this image of him with the torn clothing really reminded me of comic book icon and incredible creator Joe Kubert. If you're not familiar with the name Joe Kubert, Joe Kubert was definitely one of the driving forces in comic book art early on. He, in his own right, is right up there with, in the pantheon of classic comic book artists with people like Jack Kirby, Steve Ditko. Joe Kubert is up there, to the point where Joe eventually opened a school specifically for teaching comic book creation. So the Joe Kubert School of Comic Book Art, I believe, is still active. I don't know if they do in person anymore. It used to be you would go to the school. It was like a college for comic book artists, and a lot of great Kubert School graduates have come out and gone on to great success in the comic book industry. But Joe Kubert was really known for a lot of, like, I always think of him as a guy who did war comics, Sergeant Rocks and stuff like that, showing, and it seemed like Sergeant Rock was always, his uniform was always all ripped up, and this layering of the wrinkles, the folds, the rips, everything around the body very much reminds me of Joe Kubert. So I think that's a great nod there. And again, this is a series that I'm doing that if you're an aspiring artist, I understand that this stuff is 30 years old, and you may look at it and think there's nothing you can learn from something that's that old. Guess what? You can. If you want to know how to draw folds, wrinkles, clothing hanging on a body, guys like John Romita here, Joe Kubert, etc., look at this art because they are masters of it. So we move away to some scientists, and they come up with a very, in my mind, what is a very quick and sort of cockamamie explanation for what's going on. So apparently the space spores have changed Colonel Jameson to be stronger so that he would be able to survive on a planet that has greater gravity. And they mentioned something like, where is it they mention? Jupiter. Now, I don't know if you know anything about Jupiter, but you couldn't actually stand on Jupiter. So the idea of somebody living on Jupiter doesn't make any sense. They do act, he says he basically has like the strength of somebody, how a regular man would be on the moon under lesser gravity. So they immediately build him this suit, and what they mention here, we'll note this later as well, only Stark's technicians. So this suit that kind of basically is like kind of like a diver suit filled with lead that would normally, make you not buoyant in the ocean. It's kind of like that, except he's just wearing it around all the time. This is built by Tony Stark and Stark Industries. So there's a little nod to the rest of the Marvel Universe. There's another one later that I'll mention. And as we know from earlier videos, that was a big push by Stan. Stan Lee loved the idea of the interconnected world. All these characters live in New York and act in New York. So why wouldn't they, be aware of each other? So this idea that we need something super scientific created right away, Stark Industries would be the folks to do it. So I thought that was kind of interesting. So now, of course, Jameson is sort of realizing, like, hey, my son, not only is he an astronaut, which makes him, a hero, now he has superpowers. And he could be a better superhero than Spider-Man, and he should go catch Spider-Man. And so, especially since Jonah now thinks that Spidey has robbed a bank. So that's what's going to happen. So he convinces his son to go try to capture Spider-Man. Now, one of the things I want to point out here, so you have a very small background here. They seem to be driving away, I guess, or maybe they're driving, they're driving to the lab. So I think they establish here that they're at an airport. So they're at Kennedy Airport. Now they're driving to a lab. they don't show the lab, so we don't know where that is in terms of geography, background, whatever. We have rooms, but we don't really see any kind of background establishing shot, is what it's called, to tell us where in the world we are. We're driving away from an airport, and now they're in another room. So here we've done is on this panel down here, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, panel 6. John and his son, or J. Jonah Jameson and his son John, it's going to mess me up the whole video, are talking. We don't need to see their faces. So we can read the word balloons. We know who's who. So we pull the camera all the way back so we see the city. So now we have a establishing shot of where they are. Again, a nice tip for aspiring artists. You don't always have to have your establishing shot at the beginning of a page. You do need to have something that establishes where in the world you are, where in space you are. Is it a city? Is it the country? Is it a specific place? Whatever. Every page or two, you want to have at least a hint of something that tells us that, because otherwise we get very lost here. He's at an airport somewhere. He goes to a lab. They're sort of walking around. There's no real backgrounds. They're in a room somewhere. Where is it? Aha. It's in this high-rise building in the city. So now we know they're back in New York City, which means it's very easy for Colonel Jameson to bump into Spider-Man, because everybody bumps into superheroes as they're walking around in New York City, right? That's just how it goes. So now we cut back to another little plot thread. Again, trying to kind of not wrap up, but definitely make sure that we're not forgetting about what happened in the issue before. And this is something that I really like, that again, we're seeing more of as we move forward. In a lot of the older episodes we've seen, and you can go back on the playlist and see these, I hope you do. But there are a lot of times where characters get introduced, or a villain returns, and it's what I call a one and done. The comic has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And if you took them, the 3 or 4 of these in a row, and you shuffled them out of order, it would be no big deal, because they could have happened in any order. There's nothing that happens in issue 1 that has to happen in issue 2 to 3 for you to understand the story, right? There's no real through line. We're seeing more of a plot through line. What I mean by that is we have things like Colonel Jameson. We've seen Colonel Jameson before, going all the way back to Amazing Spider-Man #1. And he has always been a fan of Spider-Man. Spidey saved him. He thinks his dad is being unreasonable. But now these spores and these superpowers are kind of altering his perceptions, right? And then we have the Rhino. And we don't want to just forget about that. So we're going to pull a little plot thread in through here as well. We see things about Aunt May and her health. Or there's a big thing about the joke, the running gag that Aunt May keeps trying to match up Peter with Mary Jane Watson. That also plays into this issue. So we're seeing more of a plot through line that's being continued through the story, through issue to issue. So now you're getting to the point where if you missed an issue, there's a chance you may have missed a little something. And that certainly is a great marketing plan. And if you want someone to buy your comic, make sure you have plot threads that go through, because somebody reads issue 1, and if that story's one and done, there's no reason for them necessarily to buy issue number 2. So make sure you've got some threads going on there that you can pull in and out throughout the run of your comic. So they've got the Rhino in custody, but they're not sure what to do with him. They can't give him sedatives through needles because the suit is too thick. And they also can't get the suit off him. It's like it's bonded to his body. And so they don't know what to do. And we see here he finally starts to regain consciousness. Now we cut to, here's the other part where Stan cuts in another nod to the rest of the Marvel Universe. How do you deal with this in a legal sense? So he would go on trial. Well, who's going to be the lawyer to defend him? In this case, we see Foggy Nelson from Daredevil. So Foggy Nelson is Matt Murdock's legal partner and best friend. Matt Murdock is Daredevil, and he's unavailable because he's having adventures as Daredevil. So again, another little nod. If you're a Spidey fan, Marvel Universe fan, Here we mentioned it all connects, and maybe you go, ooh, maybe I want to find out what's happening in Daredevil. Let me go see if I can find a copy of Daredevil 21. So some inner marketing as well. So very, very smart. I like this. The Rhino wakes up. Again, the character looks great. Thick, powerful, heavy, which is exactly what a Rhino looks like. So very, very nice work. I love how low he gets his head. And again, really looks like a rhinoceros with the eye of the costume and the horns and stuff as he crashes through a wall. And then here, I thought this was a terrific panel. They use gas. So you can't give him liquid injections. So they use a gas with a tranquilizing agent in it to knock him out. Perfect. I love the shading. I love how heavy he feels. He feels like he's about to fall. You can feel the thump that's going to happen when he hits the ground. I really, really think this is a terrific panel and terrific pose. So one of those things where you'll see over here as well with now Peter's going to be interacting with some of his classmates about things. You know, again, some of those plot threads of what's going on. We're not forgetting anything. Sometimes the best panels are these small ones. I'd love them to be much larger sometimes. You could really get into the weeds and check them out. But sometimes these little gems are the things you're looking for. You know, again, I keep saying this. As an aspiring artist, don't skim over the small panels. Don't skim over the panels of the talking heads. These things are really important, and you can learn a ton from them. These characters up here, these scientist characters are trying to hold on to the Rhino, keep him sedated. These faces are terrific. The receding hairline. This guy here, he's got kind of a slick back hair. A little bit of hair is falling down to his ground. The way the beard is drawn, sort of feathering up into his cheek and jawline. Terrific characters. So don't forget to put some love into these small panels when you're creating your comics. Peter is hanging out with his classmates a little bit here at school, and of course, here's Gwen Stacy. She is drawn absolutely gorgeous, and if I'm not mistaken, I think so. Previously, we could go back and look, but I think I'm right on this. And if I'm not, somebody correct me in the comments. But previously, you would always see Gwen Stacy, and her hair is always styled this way, but she had these little circles up at the top of the hairline, which I think were supposed to be sort of like a barrette, right? Something to hold her hair back. Now we've seen her with the headband. And if you know anything about Spidey and you know anything about the Gwen Stacy character in the comics, this becomes her iconic look. Gwen Stacy always has a headband holding her hair back, and this may be the first time we see it. Now, it's not the first appearance of a character per se, but when you're a big comic book nerd like I am and you are into the weeds in this stuff, this is the kind of thing that I notice. I believe that this is the first appearance of Gwen Stacy's headband, which, you know, becomes part of her signature look. And really, John Romita draws her absolutely gorgeous. So beautiful face. This is his in his wheelhouse where his strong suit is at this time, and he really does a great job. Even in small panels where she's sort of the focus, but there's a lot of dialogue going on, he does it terrific. Now, Peter, of course, he is supposed to be meeting finally Mary Jane, and so he has to decline on an invitation from Gwen, which makes him feel bad because he is interested in Gwen. And of all people, so Flash Thompson wants to rib him, thinking everybody's going to be, you know, siding against Peter for being a jerk. Harry Osborn immediately pals up and goes, no, Peter, hey, I'm sure he's got a reason for it. And even Gwen defends Peter. So everybody seems to have really turned around very quickly on Peter's an outcast. He never has any luck. He's not going to be in with the crowd. He's not going to have a lot of friends. He's a very lonely guy for all these reasons. He's an orphan. He lives with an elderly aunt. His Spider-Man identity keeps him separated from everybody. Stan is really heading in a different direction, trying to sort of normalize Peter, bring him in, make him more popular. Very interesting choice, and obviously something that I think was part of a bone of contention, if you will, between Stan and Steve Ditko. And I don't know that it contributed to Steve leaving the book, but I'm sure it didn't help. So there we go. So Peter says, I can't go to your party. Sorry. And Flash Thompson ends up looking like the jerk in the end. Interesting. So here we go. Spidey decides to swing through the city. And John, as you can see here, still has not really captured a great swinging Spider-Man web swinging pose yet. Again, he's still working through this. It's very stiff, right? It's very upright. The leg is forward, which is good. The perspective of, the hands reaching out towards us, the foot reaching out towards us, that's great. There's very little bend in the body. It's very, very stiff, especially compared to here. So as he's in, we have a great angle here of him coming down, looking at Colonel Jameson and being like, wow, what happened? The way that the body is bent, the arm forward, head pushed forward from the torso. This is a terrific pose. I don't know why we could see something more like that up here, just a different angle, right? And then here's something. I'm going to zoom in here on this next panel because this is, again, one of these ideas that I want to share where this is awesome. As an artist, I'm looking at this going, wow, this is terrific. We have great depth, meaning that there are multiple levels of things overlapping each other to create a sense of things being pushed into the background. From John Jameson's arm to his torso and head, this arm the head is in front of this arm, now is in front of Spidey. Terrific, terrific stuff. Spidey's arm coming up in perspective, pointing at the reader with the fingers. Great reaction. I like even the feet, kind of the way they're cocked back and bent is excellent. And this head, so his head is pushed back, and you know that because the eyes are drawn up higher on the face. And then, so this is terrific. Great panel, great poses, really nice drawing. And then you add in this giant motion curve to emphasize a punch that we can clearly see. We have a big old sound effect right in the middle, and then this like impact explosion. Again, all this stuff, I understand we're trying to sell the power of how powerful he is, but you're taking away from what is a beautiful drawing and just covering it up. And it's probably the best drawing on the page. This Spidey could be incredible, and most of him is covered up. And then you come to this next panel, and it's very dull. The punch is very powerful, right? So the twist of the body is good. The arm is extended all the way across, so you know that this is a very strong punch. That's great. But Spidey's reaction compared to this one is nothing. He's upright. His back is twisted, but not bent. The legs are sort of backwards. He looks like, he's getting hit by something, but it's not the power that this one is. And so, again, just missed opportunity here to really show that whole Spider-Man figure. I think it would be awesome. I noted that, so here, this one has, for the first few panels, so here, a couple of good examples of what I call choreography continuity. I've talked about that a number of times where from panel to panel, when things are happening quickly, can I track the character's movement from panel to panel, or do they sort of jump to a pose that makes no sense? And Steve Ditko, the co-creator of Spider-Man, was amazing at his choreography continuity. The figures move from panel to panel in a way you could track where their weight was. If this arm moved this way, then you had to punch with the right hand because the left hand is holding you up, or whatever it was. Here, this is pretty good. The arms are both up over the head when Spidey tries to web him up, so they both are up forward when he rips through the webbing. That's great. The punch from Jameson makes sense. His arms are up high, so when he goes to punch, the arm is still up high. Spidey ducks and then pushes himself up to hit him in the midsection with his back. Very creative choreography. I like that a lot. I think it's very good. This follow-through punch where Spidey backflips kind of out of the way is okay. We're getting there, but then this doesn't make sense to me. So he backflips out of the way. We don't see where his feet are going. He's not backflipping out enough to where you could tell he lands, yet suddenly he's on his feet solid and throwing a right cross. But they're not in position to throw a right cross, right? So what I mean is this is Spidey's left arm. So when he gets out of the way, unless somehow Colonel Jameson crosses in front of Spidey and turns around, this position doesn't make sense. Now, things in comics, you may be saying, if you're a comic book reader, you may be saying this, things in comics don't need to make sense. It just has to look cool. You're 100% right. And this punch is great. This is a perfectly passable superhero punch. Good fist. Again, action. You got a motion line. The punch is crossing all the way across his body, so we know that he's putting all his energy into it. No problem with the art. It just doesn't make sense from panel to panel, and that's what takes something that's good and makes it great. And the difference between good and great is very, very small detail. And that's one of those details for me that makes this good, but this sequence isn't great. So that's my 2 cents on it. But over here, this is again pretty good. Spidey punches him. He realizes that he's not only strong, but he's incredibly tough. It hurts his hand, and he backs into the wall. Nice angle, nice Dutch angle on the approaching lumbering, almost like Frankenstein, right? Coming at you. Spidey leaps out of the way as he can, and then grabs all of the brick debris, and then swings it around to hit Colonel Jameson with it. This is pretty nice. This is pretty good. Again, continuity as far as the movement, where people are in space. I like the big panel so that you really get a sense of this stuff swinging all the way around to hit him. This should be really a real solid big hit. There's dust and it turns into nothing. So, again, good continuity, good choreography, interesting angles, nice camera work, good choice of panels and page layout. So again, I don't have any problem with it. It's just sometimes subtle details. Again, take something from being for just good to great, or from great to greatest. More fighting. This is a pretty decent Spidey web swinging pose. I'm okay with this. It's a little stiff. His spine, if you trace his spine down his body, is perfectly straight. And if anything, Spidey should definitely seldom be drawn as perfectly straight, unless it's something like this where he's really flexing his spider strength. I want to see more bend to my character, because that's part of his power set, is his flexibility and his agility. But this one's pretty good, because I can sort of assume he's leaping away as he's not just swinging, but leaping off and then sort of spinning that web. So that's pretty good. And then I do like, we've talked about this, I think in the last episode as well, that John Romita has done. As he does any kind of flashback, he has this very nice sort of bubble, almost thought balloony kind of panel border, which works just to help you remember this is not what's happening. This is his memory. And this explains the whole bank thing. Peter's in the bank. His spider sense goes off. He hears the bag is ticking. He knows there's a bomb in it. But for whatever reasons, he just doesn't have time to explain to anybody that there's a bomb in the bag. So he takes it and just assumes that when everybody realizes there's no money missing, they'll know he was innocent. Seems like kind of sketchy logic to me, but if you don't come up with something, then there's no plot push for Colonel Jameson to attack Spider-Man. It makes Colonel Jameson seem even more villainous than he would if he was, now he thinks he's right. He thinks Spider-Man is a villain. Spider-Man is a bank robber. So he feels justified, even if we know that he's not. So anyway, just some storytelling stuff. It's an interesting plot contrivance, but, you know, we all know that there would be better ways to get through that. And then again, this is pretty good Spidey pose. I like it. So you see the bend in that waist as the legs are coming up. This is a pretty good swinging pose. So not bad, you know, as far as what we've seen so far from John Romita. So pretty good pose there. He comes in to tell Jameson, like, hey, call your son off. I didn't rob this bank and I can prove it. Just ask the bank if they're missing any money, which of course he does follow up and finds out that's true. He didn't rob a bank. And so, but now at this point, his son, being the spores are making him irrational, the power is making him irrational, and he doesn't want to give up the fight. So I think something very interesting here, and I don't know if this is Stan was going for this or this is me reading into more into it than what there is, right? Sometimes a pipe is a pipe. A painting is just a painting. But in this case, I'm going to give you my thoughts. What we see here is a counter or I'm trying to think of a better term for it. We'll say a counter to Peter himself as Spider-Man. So what's happened here is John has gotten great power, and he is an astronaut, and he is a hero, and he is a soldier, and his dad has convinced him to go after Spider-Man. And again, originally he thinks he is justified and doing his job as a hero. After Spider-Man beats him, it now becomes personal. And now it's about a grudge. And now he's starting to go, nobody can stop me. I don't care what anybody says. I'm the strongest. He even says here, I have the strength to make my own rules. I can write my own ticket. I can do whatever I want because I have this power. And that's the opposite of Peter. With great power comes great responsibility. So John is losing that responsibility, whereas that is the driving force behind Peter. If he didn't have that mindset, Spider-Man could do anything. We've just seen he could rob a bank in minutes anytime he wanted to. Who's going to stop him? Nobody could stop him. And yet, that's not what Peter does. He struggles with finances. He struggles with school. He struggles with friends. He struggles with his aunt, etc., etc. And he does it all because he's responsible. But what you see here is the power is corrupting. Absolute power corrupts absolutely. And that's what we're seeing with John. So these are the twisted mirror images, or the opposite sides of the coin, if you will. And I think that's what we're trying to see here without just flat out smashing it on somebody's head. So there's my thought about that. The fight continues. Now he's shed the boots that were weighing him down, so now he can use his strength to leap. And this is another terrific image here. I love the down shot. So again, we talk about shots. We think about the viewer as a camera, and so you're going to move the reader's view using the drawing, because we can't move the book around, right? It's not really in space. And so the viewer's eyes are the camera. So now we are looking down. We are behind Spidey, looking down the wall at the ground as Jameson leaps up at us. Now, for me, I would have thought, as I'm putting this together, I probably would have drawn this as a large vertical panel, him jumping up to emphasize the verticality. But by putting them sideways, you can use a really nice wide horizontal panel, and yet still get the same feeling that he is leaping up at Spider-Man. So again, I'm learning something as well, and that's part of this series, right, is to learn from the masters. And this is a really nice way of doing it. Vertical doesn't always have to require vertical panel composition. Vertical panel compositions are very tough to then lay out the rest of your panel around and how you move the reader's eye through it. So horizontal panels work very well. This is awesome. I'm going to zoom in on this. This Spidey image right here of him. Oh, come on. crawling up the wall away. This is phenomenal. This, to me, is iconic, classic Spider-Man. This is great. The head turn, the leg, the fingertips, just the weight on the fingertips and toes. This arm splayed out because he's going to have to reach up to get the fingertips here. This is Spider-Man. This is excellent, excellent, excellent. So, terrific. One more thing. I did say we were going to do it, and I apologize. I have not been making a point to really note it as we've gone through here, and that is the inking. So I want to talk about this. So John Romita is the inker, and he's doing a serviceable job. Now, one of the things that I would argue is that the inking is what I would call a little thin. What I mean by that, let me go back a little bit here. So when you have these kinds of panels and you see like Jonah's face here is a good example. Over here, you have Jonah in the foreground and his son in the background. The ink lines that are drawing these faces, these figures, basically are the same. It's the same width of line of Jonah's nose as it is his son's arm. One of the things about inking comics and the way you do it is a thicker ink line indicates shadow, indicates closeness. So something that's closer to the camera should have a thicker ink line than something that's further from the camera. So if you have here, you have like Peter in the foreground and his face, this line should be a little thicker to help indicate that he's in the foreground. Now he's done it at the bottom of the chin. That's the other part. Thicker line is away from the light. It adds shadow without drawing a shadow. So under the nose is a little thicker. Under the forehead here as it comes in is a little thicker. But this line right here where his forehead is really is about the same thickness as the top of Gwen's head. I would like to see Peter outlined a little bit heavier to see him in the foreground. That's my opinion. That's just how I like to see inks done. Maybe that's what you would consider a more modern style of inking. I don't know. Same here. Flash is in front of Gwen, and they're not that different in terms of the space. They're in a relatively the same plane. They're, just about touching shoulders. But it wouldn't kill you to have a little bit of a thicker line on Flash, especially, as we said, something around like under the ear, the side of the shoulder. It's hard to see with the color registration problem. And then things like the top of his head, the hair, maybe as you come down the bottom as it would, your head curves back, maybe these lines of his hair would be a little bit thicker to help emphasize that the light, top of his head is hitting the light and the bottom of his head isn't getting as much light. We see it here on Gwen's hair as it curves down under. This is a slightly thicker line compared to the top. And we don't see that consistently everywhere. So the inking is okay. But again, here's an example. So Spidey is much closer to us than Colonel Jameson. And yes, the bottom, so you're always assuming that the light is coming from the top, basically from the sky, right? So this line is very, very thin on the top. And then the line is thick at the bottom, under the legs. But then I don't see the same thickness like under the forearm here or in the hands, under this arm. I'd like to see that. The other thing you can do with your line thickness that really helps is it separates the forms. Spidey's arm here is in front of his body, and it's really kind of hard to tell. Now, some of this, again, is the coloring. This should be sort of, well, he has a spider symbol on the back of him, so some of this might be blue, but some of it's going to be red. So, but this line right here that I'm tracing is his arm and shoulder, but it's hard to separate from the back, especially when they're the same color touching each other. So I'd like to see a much thicker line here to help differentiate that. Same with the blue on the arm. I would make this much thicker here, or even shadow under the armpit, if you will. I would add a drop shadow in here to help separate this form from this form. They've done it here on the leg and on the back of the leg. Why not under the arm? Same thing with Colonel Jameson. Because his costume is all yellow, There's a shadow under the arm here that separates the bottom from the top, but this top line could be a little darker to help separate those pieces out. It sort of blurs together, especially, again, when you zoom back out. Like right now, we are zoomed in pretty far. Trying to see if it tells me how far exactly, what percentage. I can't see, but so this is 295%. So we were at 400. This is at like 600% before you can kind of tell what some of the stuff is. So when we get back out, we're normally looking at it. This is 170% of size. And the lines are very, very thin. Look at how thin the background lines are. That's fine because you want your characters to push forward and not the detail, not to take away. But again, I find just the inking to be very thin. So again, I promised you we'd talk a little bit about John Romita as an inker. Very serviceable. The shadows are where the shadows need to be. The lighting is consistent. It's coming from above. The way he shades certain materials, no problem. It's very consistent with what we've seen from other inkers or other panels, him himself, etc. But I'd like to see just more variety. So right here, this is great. Now it has to be an extreme close-up. You can see Spidey's foot is in the foreground, has a very heavy line separating it from the background and from Colonel Jameson jumping up to catch him. This could be used a little more on some of the other panels. Even when you're not at this extreme a close-up, you could have an image that's much closer to us, like, maybe this pipe here. So you have a close-up of Spidey. It's not really a close-up, but we are close because we're right behind him as Colonel Jameson's looking up. So it kind of did it here. This is a thick line. This could be even maybe a little thicker. And then same, this pipe right here is between us and Spidey. This should have a very, very thick ink line. It doesn't. Again, the subtleties, the little tiny things. Does it take away from the story? Not at all. Again, is the inking in this issue serviceable? 100%. Is it the difference between something that is good and great and great and greatest? Are those little small details. So the fight continues, and Spidey gets Colonel Jameson in position where they can drop through this skylight down into, apparently it's I forget what he says it is. Oh, it's a power station. So this is an electrical station, and so he has an idea. And so, again, good choreography as far as we've established he's in front of this window, this light, what do you call it? Skylight. We have the tower. He uses the tower to kick him. The tower's still there in the background, so we're in the same space. He grabs his hands, flips over so that the two of them go through and fall to the floor. Perfect. It wouldn't have been bad to see maybe one of them or both of them getting up off the floor. I'm assuming nobody, would have landed on their feet per se, but here they are falling head over heels down through a window, and then they're already on their feet. Maybe getting up off the floor wouldn't have been a bad idea there. And then one more thing before we go. This is insane. I've seen this commercial, this advertisement in the past before in old comics. So one, pet seahorses. Seahorses, sea monkeys, all that stuff has been around forever. You can get them for $1. Okay. But you could get a pet monkey for $18.95. You can send away an express collect order, mail check or money order for $18.95 for a squirrel monkey. Almost human with its warm eyes. Your family will love it. These young monkeys grow to about 12 inches high. Eats the same food as you do, even likes lollipops. Simple to care for and train. Free cage, free leather collar and leash, monkey toy and instructions. Live delivery included. Oh my God. Did anybody ever order a monkey through a comic book? This is mind-blowing. The stuff that they advertise, and this is for children. Now, $20 in 1966 would have been a lot of money. I don't know who had $20 back then. But if somebody could get $20 and get a monkey, that's crazy. It's insane. Blows my mind. Blows my mind. And that's why you're looking at an actual, not a reprint, but an actual old comic of the day. Now, here we have some good, as I mentioned, choreography as well. Spidey here really, I think, this is my opinion, he takes the punch. He's trying to move Colonel Jameson into a very specific position. So he takes the punch, moves him so that, ducks away so that he hits part of the device, and then as he's crouched down, gives the old Captain Kirk two-handed hammer punch into Colonel Jameson's chin to knock him back in between two of the generators. And Spidey explains his plan. The suit is electronic or electromagnetic. How does Spidey know this? I don't know. I guess it's an assumption. This suit could have just been filled with lead. Who knows that it's electromagnetic? Okay. And that getting between the generators would cause feedback and shock him to a degree that would then somehow nullify the space spores, but not kill Colonel Jameson. I mean, and he says, boy, my spider powers are great, but it was my science savvy. That is some questionable science. I don't know where you came up with this science. If you want to talk about the science of electricity and, that kind of a thing, maybe. But knowing that the suit was electromagnetic, knowing that it would cause a connection and short circuit when put between the generators, and that amount of electricity would negate the spore's effect on him, is some extremely questionable science. So, Spidey, I'm worried about your science, brother. But, again, it's comics. Listen, we have a guy that got bit by a radioactive spider, so radioactive spider venom now makes him stick to walls and makes him super strong. So, who are we to argue about science, right? So, everything's back to normal. We're all good. Of course, J. Jonah Jameson gives no credit to Spider-Man. He understands that he believes that it's his son took care of this all himself. He's good. Spidey swings away. Again, not bad. In terms of a swing pose, not great, but we're getting there. This is at least a little different, so we'll see how it goes. And then the next morning, Peter is resting, and he's like, this is going to be great. And forgets, Mary Jane is coming over for dinner. So he's going to get ready, and he's like, this will be horrible. And I'm really interested in Gwen, but I got to go through with this. And they head over to Mrs. Watson's house, and who arrives but her niece? And it's Mary Jane Watson. And we have the incredibly classic moment, face it, Tiger, you just hit the jackpot. So here we finally have the true first appearance of Mary Jane Watson. And again, for those of you who know, we've been getting hints. We'd see little images of her covered up, things like that. Now we have Mary Jane. And this is John Romita's 100% design on what Mary Jane should be. The haircut, the style, the sleeveless shirt, the whole 9 yards. Mary Jane was his character. And what he sets in motion here in terms of setting up Mary Jane, her look, her attitude, her body posture, clothing, hairstyle, this sticks around for decades. John hits a home run with Mary Jane. And so absolutely unbelievable. For me, I mentioned here, this is probably one of the top 4, in your Mount Rushmore of Spider-Man moments. Right up there with lifting up the Dr. Octopus's, all the machinery from Dr. Octopus's underwater lab to escape and save Aunt May. The original finding the burglar that he killed Uncle Ben was the guy he let get away. I mean, this one is right up there with those in terms of importance and classic moments for Spidey. So Mary Jane has made it to the stage, everybody, and we will be seeing some more Mary Jane coming up soon. So very exciting for that. Now, one more thing I want to put out here is normally I don't really look through the letter pages and stuff like that, but I found it interesting that the letter page here, a lot of the letters are full of people who, you know, a couple issues in now are very happy with John Romita and what he's doing. They really talk about how much they like his art, but then you've got a bunch of Steve Ditko images that they use to fill the letters page. So I thought that was very interesting. Plus, I wanted to kind of show this so that you could take a look and really feel kind of side by side, excuse me, the difference. Now, we've just spent a whole episode looking at John Romita and how he draws Spider-Man. And now we go back to, you see Steve Ditko. You see the slimmer body. You see more web lines on the uniform, on the costume. We see more crouching, posing, curling. When he flips out of a pose, look at how far back the head is cocked back as he's flipping away from bad guys in that pose. Great angle here, upshot, turning his head up of the web shooting, hanging on the building. All this stuff, great stuff. So it's very interesting to see that right after we've just seen a bunch of, and I'll just kind of go back here, of this. Of Spidey being more solid, blocky. Look at how simplified the Spider-Man web design has become on the costume. Right? You see, this is the back of the head. 1, 2, 3 lines. The spacing between the web, we'll call it the scallops, the circular part of the webbing. Look how far apart this is. So you've got 1, 2, 3 before you're hitting the back of the head. 1, 2, 3 on the face. It becomes stylized and simplified in a way that's faster to draw. Other artists, if somebody else has to come in and do a fill-in issue, you have a consistent, easy model to draw. But it takes away a little bit, for sure, of what Ditko brought with the creepiness, the web. It feels like a spider's web laying over the top, not just a pattern. And I think you see that here. So it's definitely a different look, but the fans were moving on and we're feeling okay. The one thing I do want to point out is this one reader here, Terry Masick, wrote in, and he mentioned, or they mentioned, how John Romita is doing pretty good, but that Aunt May used to look like what she really was, an old, wrinkled, worried aunt. But Johnny cut nearly 20 years off her age. Now she now looks like a spry young 50-year-old. And I had mentioned that in the very first issue that we've seen where John Romita took over, he de-aged Spider-Man a lot. And so, yeah, I just found it interesting. Not only did I notice that, but looks like some regular readers noticed that right away. So there is our issue, Amazing Spider-Man number 42. We're going to cut back over to the main camera here, and we'll wrap things up. So there we go. A fun issue. So much is happening. So much is going on between the change to John Romita, him getting his feet underneath him as the regular artist. We saw him as a regular inker as well for the first time. So we got to talk about that. We have awesome plot threads going through. The first appearance of Mary Jane. Some really interesting stuff happening. And this is going to continue through for a while. I think this is the direction that we're heading, is more of a serialized book. Again, where the readership has been established. We know that there's a certain number of people who are going to buy Spidey every month. And so we want to reward those folks with having a story that they can continue to read, but hopefully one it's obvious enough that anybody could jump in at any moment too. So we're getting a nice mix of those things at this time. Great cover. Okay character as far as Colonel Jameson in a one-off, where he got some superpowers and then he went away. We'll see more of him down the road. He's one of those guys that every so often pops up and has really weird things happen to him. So we'll see more Colonel Jameson in the future. But that's episodes in the future. The next one we'll be seeing will be next week. Again, remember, every Monday at 8 a.m. we put out a new video. So keep your eyes open for those. If you hit the notifications button, you'll be notified when the videos go live. Thank you all for taking your time to explore this episode and issue with me. I thank you so much, and we'll talk again next week with even more Spider-Man. Thanks.